Okay, I think it's time to start. Hello, everyone, and welcome here at Lanthieri Mansion in Vipavi at a roundtable focused on the impact of AI on science and society. The event is being organized by University of Nova Gorica during the first SMASH workshop. And my name is Maja Ratej. I'm a journalist working for the Slovenian Public and National Radio. Approximately 2 years ago, I was standing in the lobby of Cankarjev dom in Ljubljana, surrounded by Slovenian scientific and research elite. It was the ZOIS Awards ceremony, which are the highest awards in the field of science in Slovenia. That year, the message of the event, from my journalistic point of view, was very uniform and memorable. From all the conversations with the awardees, I only remember one thing. Almost everyone was talking about artificial intelligence. They discussed everything from how amazing the new language models are to how working with big data and image recognition can significantly speed things up and take research to a whole new level. I got the impression that artificial intelligence would be something truly groundbreaking, and I made a tiny note to the recorded interviews. I wrote to myself, check how things are going with this artificial intelligence. Is it really so important? We know what followed. Since then, we can follow the news on AI almost on a daily basis. AI is becoming a key tool in research across many fields. It's helping scientists work faster, more accurately, and even more creatively, whether it's discovering rare diseases or developing sustainable materials. But it also comes with challenges, as we know. The black box nature of some AI systems raises questions about transparency and reliability, and there are ethical concerns about who has access to these powerful tools and their broader impact on society. Well, today we will explore both the potential and risks of using AI in science and discuss how we can ensure it benefits not just research, but also humanity as a whole. I have 5 distinguished guests with me. So next to me, there is Vida Groznik, Executive Director and co-founder of NEUS Diagnostics and also Assistant Professor at the University of Ljubljana. Then Tanja Samardzic, a computational linguist with a background in language theory and machine learning, and she's a professor at the University of Zurich and SMASH governing board member. Then there is Brigita Jurisic, representative for business and strategic relations at International Iberian Nanotechnology Laboratory in Portugal. She's a technology transfer professional with background in psychology, marketing, and strategic management. And joining us remotely today, we can see him there, is Nenad Tomašev. He is scientific researcher in DeepMind, where he worked both in the applied and research arms. So welcome, everybody here. Oh, sure, of course. I said that I need to start with ladies. And then I went there to the Zoom, and of course, from the United States, there is Uroš Seljak, a theoretical cosmologist focused on how to extract fundamental properties of our universe from cosmological observations. And he's a professor at the University of California, Berkeley. He received the prestigious 2021 Gruber Foundation Prize from Yale University. Hello and welcome. Now everyone is presented, and I'll start with a very concrete and very new topic. Maybe anyone catch the news today? What are the newest awardees for the Nobel Prize in Physics? Has everyone caught this during today? Yeah. And I think it's a perfect timing for today's debate, for today's conversation, because this year's awards are going to 2 prestigious scientists. These are Geoffrey Hinton and John Hopfield, and they will be awarded for the discoveries that laid the foundation for machine learning, which is, of course, we know very much important for the AI technologies. And I said that I need to start with this a little bit to explain so that we can understand why they're so important. And I would like to ask Vida Groznik to explain us a little bit why they're important, why this award is given to them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Maybe I can start with this. So computer science and AI got its first Nobel Award. So computer science is not part of Nobel Awards, right? So we never said, okay, you will be next Nobel Award winner, but it seems that now that's even possible for us, right? So these two scientists, of course, have laid the grounds for machine learning, which is now, let's say, one of the hottest topics in artificial intelligence. So why would they get it? So the first one, the John Hopfield. So he was the one who created the artificial neural network, which was able to recreate images. So let's say if you put an image into this artificial neural network, which was distorted, it was able to reconstruct the image, which was really a good, how to say it, breakthrough in the science at the time. And the inspiration he got basically from physics. Okay, so how he did it is, if you understand the physics, the basic matters, the physics will be better at this, right? Explanations. So each atom has its own spin, right? And they can work as a magnet. Okay, they can attract or pull out, right? And he used this the same idea for this artificial neural networks, and he trained the network on the number of the machines pictures, and then when you put the distorted image into the neural network, it was able to reconstruct it. And this was one first breakthrough, and then the other one, the Hinton, he built upon this, okay? And he was basically the one who created the so-called Boltzmann machine. So what is the basics of this? So he took the basics from physical statistics, statistical physics, okay, to do it. And yeah, the idea was that instead of the pixels that were used for the sorry, I forgot the name, Hopfield's neural network, he took the nodes, okay? And then the nodes are connected with synapses, and they are communicating with one another, right? So this is some kind of a basic of how then these neural networks and deep neural networks work and how the process is doing. So basically you want to know whether we have several different animals, which animal is the one that we're looking at. Let's say we trained our network now with a bunch of pictures of animals. We trained the whole model. And then when we add, let's say, a cat into that model, it can say, okay, this is the picture of a cat. And this is basically what we are now using for the deep neural networks and all other networks that we know and we are currently using. And what it can also do, it can basically create a new image. Okay, the one it didn't see yet, but based on the patterns that it has been included in the learning data set, it can now even recreate some new images. So these are the basic things, what they have created, and these are very important in machine learning. So yeah, we were surprised by this award, I would say, because, well, they're not physics, but since they are coming from the physical, let's say, background or inspirational, that's probably the reason they got the award.
But as I was listening to Ivan Bratko, the pioneer of the machine learning today, he was explaining what's behind of this prize for this year. And he said that this is not the only bypass in the for the artificial intelligence. It was once in the past when the word was given to the Feynman. He was also very important in artificial intelligence, but he received it in economics. So it's the first one in physics. Yeah, but Now, Tanya, I'll now switch to you. In the last couple of years, we are quite, let's say, hypnotized by what artificial intelligence is capable of. Especially this general public is very much surprised what these general models, language models can do, large language models can do. How do you see the development of these models, and how well do they mimic natural language?
Now, I think, yes. So, so this is precisely actually when you say, you know, the impact of AI on the society, which is the topic of this roundtable. I was wondering, you know, like, what is the AI that we're talking about? Because AI is something that has been around for at least 70 years. So this is something that I think it's important to say. So I think what we're talking about is the breakout of AI from science and technology into the broader society. And this breakout, I think well, my interpretation is that it was enabled by, you know, one company, somebody having an idea to make these models that we have had since long time ago easily accessible. So they set up a web page where everybody could try it, and this is what made people very impressed. So we have been generating language, you know, for a long time, and now we can see everybody can do it easily. You don't even have to know how to program. You just go and you type your text and you get. So that's really like one breakthrough that that I think made this whole fuss about AI. This is called big language models. So this is something that is not so old. So right, so in language modeling, we have seen several steps, several developments that took a long time. And it's true that the one that we have now is really a big development. It's a big step in the performance. So let's say we have been trying to have systems for machine translation since 1950s, let's say like that. And now machine translation works. This is the first time that it actually works. And so the impact for our field is, well, my field is solved. So there's not much to do, let's say, in some way. But on the other hand, I see it as an inspiration. So, you know, like now we have to think of other questions. And so me personally, that I'm more interested in more fundamental questions rather than practical. I'm quite happy because now there are more people coming to my area, and now more people are interested in fundamental questions because these practical things are taken over by companies.
But if you can pick, for example, some of the most surprising tools that are coming to the front beside large language models, which would that be?
You mean what will happen next? So I can see that companies are working, and this is why I'm saying, you know, now I'm actually, when we talk about these topics, I'm pretty much like you know, I'm observing what companies are doing. So it's not so much fundamental research anymore. But what I'm seeing is that companies are working on generating videos, generating images. So multimodal processing of all kinds is now a big fashion. And I believe that those tools will be now more available to people. I would say that's the first thing.
Vida, would you add any of other tools that are maybe you are particular focus right now on that will be key players in the future?
You mean the tools?
Yes.
In general, or yeah, so there are many different tools that I can now remember, but let's say if we go to medicine, then of course we have tools that can help us look at the images, let's say MRI images, CT scans, and see whether, or tell whether we have some anomalies present in the images, like tumors or fractures or something like that. Then we have different tools that can help with faster prognosis, not only on images, but also like ECGs or EEGs, whatever, all kind of these tools. I don't know, self-driving cars, maybe. Maybe we'll come to that one point. What else then?
One more example, I recently saw that, I'm not going to advertise companies, you know, but one company released like a podcast tool. So you can go and you can ask for a network, a large network, to create two agents that conversate between them on the topic of your interest. So you ask them a topic and then they discuss two agents, both machines. Yeah. that's quite new, I think.
So there is a lot of imagination included, and only the sky is the limit. What kind of tools will be developed in the future? But let's focus more into science, because this is a scientific conference. A lot of the scientists from different backgrounds, and I would like to dig a little bit more into specific fields. What, for example, are you using? Uroš Seljak, maybe a question for you. In cosmology, what kind of tools from the artificial intelligence point of view are you using and would like to have?
Yeah, so actually just a quick comment on this podcasting. There's actually another tool there where you can give the machine a paper and it will create a podcast for summarizing the content of the paper. And that's really super cool, right? Because now I can, just advertise what the essence of the paper is. And it actually really tries to phrase it in very layman terms. So it's actually an interesting tool for advertising your own work, research work. But okay, so obviously advertising the work, research work would be one of those applications. But at least in my field of astronomy, cosmology, and physics, a lot of the AI is trying to, the goal is to try to extract the information from the observations, from the data, or observations or experiments, and try to extract it in some sense in the best possible way. Using some summary of information that is more complete, better. And in many cases, these optimal, let's say, extraction information can really be several times better than what traditional tools can do, and several times better, at least when, for example, if you talk about building a telescope, if you improve on a certain quantity by a factor of let's say 3, that's effectively like having 9 times more data, or having 9 telescopes instead of 1. So this really can be very impressive gains compared to traditional methods. And so that is certainly one of the main applications that we have in astronomy. Another one is looking for unknown unknowns, anomalies and things like that. This could be either transients in the data, or could be I don't know, some things in the astronomical images that we don't know what they are. And so that's another thing that is very interesting to use AI tools for example, also discovering exoplanets or exomoons and things like that. So a lot of these AI tools can be applied for really new discovery, really.
So this is, would you say that you are now more focused on the large-scale data analysis because of that, and that pattern recognition and so on?
Well, yes, I mean, my field was always focused on large data, in the sense that, at least the field of cosmology, was always looking for small patterns, typically below the noise, that are really certainly impossible to see by eye. So looking at the image would not actually tell you anything, and you really need very sophisticated statistical analysis to extract the information. And AI, just gives another set of tools how to extract this information. And in many cases, this extraction is more successful than traditional ways of doing it.
And what would happen with traditional analysis, like traditional tools you use so far? Is this very much a big change in cosmology astronomy?
No, it's not yet. At least in cosmology, it's not yet a big change. And in fact, there's a lot of work which tries to combine the two. For example, you can combine information using traditional methods, and then maybe try to look for components which are in some sense orthogonal to that information, and then combine them together, right? So this, is then guaranteed to give you at least as much information as before, and hopefully more. Because certainly there are applications where AI tools don't improve the situation. In fact, they can make it worse, because you're still training from the data. It's data-driven training, and so this can be suboptimal. And so combining actually traditional methods with data-driven, combining with physics-driven, let's say, methods is certainly one of the possible directions to go.
Mm-hmm. Nenad Tomašev, what are your experience? How much has AI changed and accelerated research in your fields of research?
I mean, I'd say quite a lot, and obviously I'm very excited about it all, and it's very hard to pick an application like what you're asking everyone to do. And some really good points were already brought up, I suppose. I'd say when it comes to language models in particular, they do open a lot of new possibilities, as we're seeing. Multimodality is obviously already there to a large extent. I think the very long context windows we have allow you to upload multiple books in the context of a model if you'd like, and have some kind of reasoning or summarization on top of that, should you want to do so. But I think more importantly, it's the fact that we're moving towards more agentic technology with more and more reasoning and more tool use that really sort of opens up the space of what is possible. You could have these agents developed for specific fields to help boost discovery there. They can have access to any level of external resource, call other models to do any kind of additional machine learning that has to be done, and integrate all of that, really. And I think there are companies already, I think Sakana is doing something like that, some others are as well, that are even looking to create artificial scientists, if you will, to fully automate the whole scientific process. I'm saying fully, obviously. Language models don't have extremities; they cannot physically perform experiments themselves. But to a large extent, to automate the process of coming up with plausible scientific hypotheses that one would then test in a laboratory, should a kind of a physical laboratory test be needed. And I think that's really an exciting area. Obviously, it's a very hard problem. And I guess for all of us who are doing science, we're not really, looking forward to being automated away at some point. But still, it's exciting to think how these types of tools can help us and really help accelerate discovery. And I mean, if you think about it, one of the major advances in the last couple of weeks hasn't actually been about things like multimodality. It has been about planning and reasoning, and the O1 model that OpenAI has, put out. And those are tremendous advances. And obviously, when it comes to multi-step planning and reinforcement learning and these types of things, it's something that has been done a lot in the field already in the past, not with language models perhaps, but it's certainly something that's somewhat mature as an overall umbrella of different technologies that fall within. So I think we can see more and more advances there in the let's say weeks or months to come. I'm not going to say years, because who knows what's going to happen within years at this crazy pace of development. So if you suddenly have models that can come up with hypotheses, produce reasoning chains on top of them of some kind of an arbitrary length, then self-evaluate through AI feedback and critics, try to narrow down what is what is worth pursuing, right, to put it that way. We're already seeing these advances in mathematics. So in terms of even formal expansions and proofs and things like that, these systems can do that. So yeah, at some point you do need empirical data and to interact with the real world. But I think in terms of the overall potential of accelerating science is definitely there, from the perspective of high-level intuitions, reasoning across arguments, and it's also, I think, it was mentioned on the panel already. You can make a podcast out of the paper as a kind of a fun thing. But I would say also, as someone who does research on a daily basis nowadays, because AI is such a popular field, it's impossible to even read through all of the preprints that drop on archive every single day. I make a habit of kind of scrolling through them in the morning, looking at the abstracts where something seems interesting. But there are so many papers being written, and this is just one field of many fields of science. So no human can conceivably consume all of that and have an overview of all the ideas, everything that anyone has ever done. And if we take a kind of a leap forward, not look at what the current systems can already do, but what could potentially these systems be able to do in the near future, is that they have access to all of this data online. They will have larger and larger context. All of this is going to be included in pre-training, permitting licenses and so on. But at the end of the day, these models will be able to embody more knowledge than a single human ever can. And in that sense, potentially provide us with deep scientific insights that, again, no one will simply have the time to do as a human being, because we're limited in other important ways. So I think it's a very, very exciting point in time. And we'll see where we are a couple of years from now. But yeah, I'm sure that there's going to be lots of progress in the meantime.
Yeah, a lot of information is being produced, and now this is a perfect timing to go to the text-based based tasks. And I'm gonna now turn to Brigita Jurisic because in science, the text-based tasks are, for example, like writing scientific articles, conducting reviews, generating summaries. All this can be helped by the artificial intelligence. How much do scientists already use that kind of tools for writing text, for writing summaries, and so on?
It depends on the scientist, but it's a tool and it's out there, and some use it more, some use it less. There was one of the slides yesterday here where someone was showing that the professor said, if you used AI, just don't bother applying for this position. But the reality is that for someone who's not a native speaker in English, it helps a lot if you have a revision tool and if you use it as a revision tool, or if you use it to bring your ideas together, to bounce your ideas with the agent, let's say. But you need to be aware of its limitations, of course. It's a tool as any other, and the worry there is that maybe we may think it's more powerful than it actually is, right? So sometimes you hear these ideas of going off-piste, basically just making up stuff.
Yeah, making hallucinations and so on. But how does it affect the trustworthiness of scientific research if we use that kind of technologies? Where's the barrier?
Well, the question is, how much do you actually want to limit it or not? And the reality is that there's more and more written text being produced and science being produced. And if you now start to publish more and more papers because you're aided and you can be more productive, you can have, instead of one paper written, 10, that actually causes quite a big question of trustworthiness of those papers. But bottom line is that each individual that signs that paper should recognize if they were using AI aid or not, and that it's their sole responsibility in the end for what they publish, right?
I would like now to turn to the audience here and make a quick survey. how if you use AI, for example, for I don't know, writing text, for a revision of the grammar of the language and so on, do you use it on a daily basis? For example, how many of you does it? Quite a few. What about on a weekly basis? But still not a majority. What about on a monthly basis? Okay, but still, we didn't see like half of the hands were down. How do you comment on that? How do you comment on that?
Maybe just a comment also on the grant writing, because a lot of the scientists here and everywhere, they apply for funding to have the research funded, right? Yeah. And the European Commission at this point doesn't say don't use AI. They just want you to recognize that you used it, and they want you to say what you used it for. Was it for the literature review? Was it to generate the ideas? Was it to review the texts? Mm-hmm. So to understand what was the extent of usage, because you can see by certain words that the AI was used. Mm-hmm.
Which, for example, because as journalists, we are now focusing on different words, and there's a phrase "delve into." Is something that that became really common and rose very suddenly in the last couple of months. And if we just go through the text and so on, this is a new phrase that's very modern. What else?
And so I wanted to comment on that. Do you know why this is
no
the case? All right, so that's a very cute story, because cute in some way, ironic way, because these models to be able to actually produce text and not whatever. they need to be trained in addition to the basic training, what we say on predicting the next word. That won't be enough, right? So these models, they have to see millions, billions and billions of examples, you know, of language use, and they need to actually be controlled and corrected by humans. Now, in the global world, those humans who are available for such tasks are mostly in Africa. And that word is a specificity of African, you know, dialect of English, of African variety of English. And because of so many African people work on, you know, training, well, producing data for what's called instruction training of these models, that's why we got this word. This is a very good example, I think.
Oh, okay, so I picked the right one then.
There are much more human component to these models than you know it's presented actually.
Mm-hmm. Vida, yeah. Which word? Delve into. Delve into. Vida, we were today exposing a little bit of cosmology, astronomy, a little bit of medicine as well. But which fields, scientific fields, are most obviously taking and using AI tools? Like which are the first, the pioneers, I would say.
So, well, medicine is one of them, which I already stated. Economy, for various kind of predictions, economical, and they have been using basic models for like a long time. Then, of course, we have some in astrology, in environmental predictions, for whatever, flooding, rain, and all these kind of things. So let's say that these were the four parts that are most used in, I mean, fields that AI is most used in. Do you want more? Automobile industry, of course. All of you who have maybe newer cars, you probably have sensors that can show you what's the speed on the road currently, the limit, right? So, well, you have in image, again, that they need to see. So this is one. Let's say then we have the sensors, which will tell you whether you are on the right side of the track or you have gone to the left side without putting on the blinker. So this is again one of the sensors. Then you have cars which can tell you, okay, take a break because they see that you're getting tired. Again, kind of an AI model at the back and so on and so forth. And also for constructing the car, they put it in simulators where they can see the airflow and they can then model different kind of how the car should be built and yeah, all these kind of crash tests. Yeah.
For predictive maintenance as well, to predict which parts may break down and you change before it fails down, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but now we slightly touched also the ethical issues. Maybe Tanya, I would like to ask you about, because you're quite sensitive with all these ethical issues as well, like algorithmic biases, AI generated disinformation, the potential of misuse of AI tools. How can we address this kind of issues?
Well, I would believe that Brigita is maybe better person to talk about. I would say that it's important actually to distinguish the questions that are really technological questions from questions that are societal questions. And so everything can be abused. And but I'm not a person, I'm not really an expert in ethics. So I can only share with you my belief that it's totally non-expert belief about this. That's actually the belief that guides me in my own research. That's that, you know, the technology, I don't think it can be bad on its own. It's actually what can be bad is how you use it. So to give you an example, so, you know, like a director in a school can have an AI system that helps the director assess the teachers. I'm taking this example from a book that was actually discussing this at depth. So so this AI system, it can provide, some assessments, but it's actually the responsibility of the director, whether a teacher will be fired or not. And if we leave this decision to the technology, that's really not the problem of technology. It's a problem of, society. So I would say to have, to reduce ethical risks and ethical problems, it's important to not have this agentive idea of AI, right? So use it as a tool and not as a person. And I think it's important to every time, ask yourself, so am I outsourcing my own responsibility, my own tasks to something that is not able to do it? That would be my position.
Brigita, your opinion and view on that.
So I think I would resonate your idea of like it's a tool, and I'm against stressing it as a tool. We had heated discussion yesterday about this, that as a tool, it's not, no technology is good or bad, right, by itself. It depends on the deployments it has. And before we start developing something, so the question that I'm now tackling a lot is how do we actually, from the early research on, how are we able to assess if the technology could be potentially used for some harmful activity? It might be that it harms the society or that it harms the environment in a very bad way. And it's very difficult to assess this if you don't have a specific use case in mind. So when you're doing really fundamental research, it's very difficult to know if what you're working on, what you're researching, will it have the potential to be used for bad? What is important is to be aware of the questions to be asked and what your thought process should be, to think about it and return to those assessments as you progress your research, your technology, and know what are the lines when you should stop maybe and think, okay, this is too powerful, or I need to put some parameters in place to make sure that it's used for good, or that it doesn't get into the wrong hands, let's say.
Today, when they were talking in Scotland to Geoffrey Hinton, he raised the concern about what is coming, because he compared this kind of revolution to the Industrial Revolution. He stated that this is even the bigger revolution that the Industrial Revolution was, and that we never in history, the humankind, had this chance of having something so much smarter next to it and already overtaking it. I mean, are we prepared for something like that?
Well, I'm calling for more research in social sciences because I think we really need to progress our thinking in terms of how do we deal with an AI system? How do we deal when someone is personifying the system? How do we deal with situation when the system is used as a companion, let's say? Could be to an elderly person because they are lonely, could be to someone who wants to have any kind of relationship, right? So at that point, or when we give a citizenship to a robot like Sophia, this was done in 2016 already, we actually give certain rights to the robot, right? So, and with certain rights also come obligations, not rights. So I think there's quite a lot of thinking that needs to be done in terms of research in legal terms. Anthropological questions are raised there, philosophical questions, so that we can actually develop the vocabulary and be able to deal with this novelty, right?
And on all the level of education, the AI knowledge, the AI skills should be included, I guess. Uroš Seljak, maybe your opinion. How well or more should AI knowledge, different skills, education be included in different, like, let's say, stages of education, especially in the university one?
Yes, I think there's a great potential there, and I'm for sure excited about it. For example, there was a recent study, I think from Harvard University, where they were using tutors for one of the introductory physics courses, and they compared the results of the test scores without tutor, human tutor, or AI-based tutor. And human tutor improved the test scores over the baseline without the tutor, but AI tutor even improved over the human tutor. So it actually even exceeded the test scores of human tutoring. So that's super exciting, right? Because it means that people really can learn with the help of an AI tutor, and that's just one example of an application which really improves our knowledge and understanding.
Tanya?
Right, thanks. Maybe this is now a moment to talk a little bit about some confusions and problems that we have, and expectations of what AI can do. So I would come back, because I'm language expert for language, right? I would like to come back to a very long-standing confusion between language and intelligence. So this is why. So these days we see it everywhere. We think that this is the artificial intelligence because that neural network can actually respond to us in language. And so we have this strong tendency to think that whatever can communicate in human language is an intelligent entity. And that's something that's already, since 1950s, that believes around. So the problem here is that definitely it's, I can imagine that the students can improve better. But the problem here is that we have something that is called overfitting. So AI is very good at very specific tasks. So if the task is a test, so it is very good to guide the students to succeed at a particular test. So I would just like to warn everybody against thinking that means that students definitely learn better, because tests are just one part of the human capacities of human knowledge, and they are not perfect. So if somebody passes a test, doesn't mean that person is actually learning in a general sense, like how we would like people to learn. So this is something that I think it's important to understand, and to think that, like always remind ourselves, we have strong biases as human beings. We have strong biases to think that whatever talks to us in human language is, has this intelligence. But those are machines. Those are machines. I think we always have to remind ourselves.
And Brigita, how can we improve this AI literacy? For example, with the education system and inclusion of that kind of knowledge in the education?
I think there's AI literacy that is needed, but also literacy in terms of those fundamental questions that I was saying before. So if we have a moral situation, how would we deal with it? That's some general knowledge that is not taught in schools nowadays, right? And some posing the right questions, or asking ourselves questions. What do we do if a car is driving by itself? There's a grandma crossing street, but on the other side there's a child. Like, who do you run over, for example, or do you run over? What do you think that the car should do? So this kind of questions, and just playing through scenarios, would be good to make them think like, okay, so what could we do with these technologies? How should we actually shape them to better function for the whole of the society? Because sometimes those technologies can be designed to function well for parts of society, which is what you were implying as well a bit.
Because today we are also talking about the impact on society, as you just mentioned. Are there any cases where AI use has deepened the divisions or mistrust in society?
You could see that in security usage of facial recognition, for example. It deepened quite a lot the number of arrests of Black people in the US, for example.
Vida?
So let's say social media. Since we have these large language models, it has been flooded with, how to say it, also fake news, let's say, okay? But also we have then virtual people who are non-existing, and they are posting things so that they would form your opinion. This was seen also for the political campaign in the US few years back, right? But it's still happening, and it's going more and more and more, and people are not aware that this is somebody who's trying to mess with their heads, or some of them are aware of that. At least I hope so. But I personally, sometimes I don't know whether this is a real person who is selling us things or information, or is this fake, right? And this is again huge mistrust, and also, yeah, with Black people and this kind of thing. So we have systems that are biased because they have been learned on crappy data, let's say. But if you have only pictures of white people or only Black people who are supposed to be criminals, right, then this is the result of the system. So we should be more aware on what kind of systems are we building, but there will also be somebody who will want to misuse everything, right, because of their benefits.
And sometimes I have a feeling when reading different texts, for example, last week I was talking to one of the mentors, and he has lots of people that writing PhDs under his supervision. And he said that suddenly in the last couple of years, people got very much literate in English, and all the texts are perfect. And I was like observing myself that sometimes I don't know whether I'm communicating with a machine or a real human being, and that I started loving mistakes in the texts because everything is too perfect. It's getting too perfect. Tanja Samardzic, what's your comment on that?
All right, so maybe this is a nice moment to mention that everything is too perfect for English. So yeah, so I don't know if you have tried to use this technology for any other language. It's far from perfect, I would say that. Even, even well-known, well-processed languages for which we have a lot of data, such as French or German, already in those languages, you won't be bored. So let's say like that, there will be very, very much imperfection. So that's one point to mention, that, all this that we are saying, it's solved, it works perfectly, this is all really for English. And another point that you said that everything now starts to be perfect. Yes, we are seeing this kind of unification. And I would use this metaphor that I've been thinking about for a long time, like in other domains of our life. So at some point, food has started being produced, in fabrics, so like in factories. Clothes, everything. So then, you have some kind of standardization, of unification, and that's, for some use. But then we didn't lose, we still like handcrafted things. So I believe that there will be something like that also when it comes to texts and producing texts. Once, if we ever get to the point that, we have these texts so perfect in languages that are not English, so we will still have room for handcrafted, art. So like that.
Now I'll go to Nenad. Another question for you. I'll start with the news. Almost 2 weeks ago, we could read that OpenAI will no longer be controlled by the non-profit board, and that OpenAI is turning into a full-fledged for-profit benefit corporation. And CEO Sam Altman is to receive equity in OpenAI for the first time. So that was news 2 weeks ago. So since its founding in 2015, its leaders have said that top priority is making sure artificial intelligence is developed safely and beneficially. And OpenAI was a non-profit controlled not by its CEO or by its shareholders, but by a board with a single mission: keep humanity safe. So Nenad Tomašev, what do you think will happen now after this news, after this big player is going in private business?
I mean, it's hard to say. Obviously, I don't work there, so I don't have any of the details of how it all went down. I think that there would have been people who would have foreseen something like this, perhaps. Some were maybe more surprised by the news, But yeah, I think this is just sort of a manifestation of the fact that the technology is maturing, so there is more and more commercial potential out there, and then more and more companies are looking to capitalize on that potential when it comes to technology. I guess this includes OpenAI as well, right? Yeah, I mean, there's not much more I can say, I guess, from my perspective. We have our own model here, which is obviously different. We've not been a non-profit, I suppose. But yeah, I'm sure that there's still going to be good research over there as it has been before.
Yeah, because this OpenAI is just the most visible case, I would say. But the fact is the development of AI tools is driven by private sector. And how might private sector dominance in AI technologies and patterns affect future research? What is your opinion on that?
I mean, that's a really interesting question. And I think obviously people in the room over there, I guess, amongst which there are many who are in academia, will obviously have their own views from their side of the equation. From my point of view, I mean, I obviously went into industry after my PhD and have been very happy with my choice from my personal point of view. I would say that we are doing a lot of great scientific research here, and this involves also a lot of foundational research. I would even say that some of the major fundamental methodological advances in the field of AI have come actually from industry, not academia. So it's not like we're talking about a split where industry is just doing scaling or commercialization and applications, and academia is driving forward research. I mean, the transformer paper didn't come out of academia, right? And this is what's really accelerated everything that's given rise to large language models and so on that we're seeing. So deep methodological advances are still being made across industry, actually. I guess not the only, but one of the caveats when it comes to that is that not all such research gets published. If there are commercial implications to that, I mean, sometimes companies will hold on to some pieces of IP. This goes for startups, this goes for big tech. I mean, it's just the nature of how companies operate, right? So that's maybe one difference, not the only difference, but one difference in contrast to academia. Another thing to point out, obviously, is that in terms of academic labs, and this will vary depending on where one works, right? But there is a lot of funding coming into academia from industry. So there is certainly cross-pollination where further advances in industry are maybe indirectly helping get more people into academia as young researchers, fund those projects and make good things happen there as well. Same goes for compute donations. So I think it's all one big connected ecosystem. We can't really look at it in a disconnected way as some sort of polar opposites. I would even say, and this is maybe just a personal take, that I think that if you are grounded in applications, I mean, there was a mention here earlier in the panel on, well, more from the ethics point of view, how it's important to have well-defined use cases, right? But when you're working on big, challenging, applied scientific projects, this keeps you honest in a way, and you really need to develop innovation that helps drive those outcomes. And unless you manage to hit those goals, you have simply failed. And I would just contrast that with also my experience in academia when I was a PhD student, right? Which is that, we say publish or perish, I mean, in some sense, but people are really incentivized to put a lot of research papers out there. Young researchers need it. People later on need it for grants. I mean, there is a whole system that's centered around that, which also, if we're being honest, gives rise to lots of publications without value or with very limited value, or something that's very incremental or just repeats already rehashed ideas and so on. This is not a comment on the field as a whole. There is obviously lots of valuable research, but if you look at the volume of stuff that's being put out there, if we are being honest about it, some of this is just being done to justify those things that the system needs to justify. And there have been lots of pieces of research done in certain subfields of machine learning, for example, where people will do a meta review, a meta-analysis of methods published in the field, actually compare them honestly one to each other and to properly tune baselines on benchmarks that matter, and show that all of these alleged improvements that by the authors who have published them have allegedly been better than something else, perform equivalently, which is not to say that there was no innovation or interesting thinking involved in those pieces of research, but there is a bias towards reporting positive results. There is a bias towards novelty. If you're not showing novelty in a paper, you can't publish. There are all sorts of biases that the academic publishing system has, and they don't always drive forward great research. Lots of people do great research in academia, and they can do that despite how the system is set up. But it's by no means an ideal system, and industry is not an ideal system either, because of, again, different incentives that may not always be aligned with either the public interest or the advancements of science in general as much as the interest of the company. Yeah, I'm just saying there are two sides to that coin, and you can do great research in industry and you can do great research in academia, but I think we should acknowledge that simply both systems have imperfections, and obviously we should try to fix them as much as we can. But I don't think that this change that's currently happening in industry is necessarily particularly detrimental. I'm not commenting on OpenAI in particular, but just like overall, I feel like it's a very exciting time.
Now, maybe a quite similar question for Vida and Uroš, because science is getting more and more dependent on AI tools, and the AI tools are more and more produced by the private sector. There's a bigger and bigger dominance of private sector in the development of AI tools. What does it mean for the, I don't know, AI safety in science and open science?
It's not an easy question. So yeah, there's a lot of AI built in private companies that are not out there, but we also have big big companies who do AI research and do publish openly. So Meta is one of those who is opening their own large language models for everyone, right? And we can reuse their Llama models and build upon it for our own interest or what we need to do it. Oh, yeah. So I would say that we have some kind of a mixture of those who are hiding everything that they do, and we have others who openly publish their own results. So we also have like AlphaFold, which is the model for protein predictions, right? And it has hugely helped us with predicting what kind of drugs would help for certain diseases and so on. So it's not all jammed up. I think that the biggest problem that we probably see is this drive to have even more profit, right? And this is, of course, in private sector, the main point, right? Why would I have a company if it's always doing losses? Somebody needs to, I mean, you need to have incentive why you're doing it. But on the other hand, we also have those kind of companies who would like to do research and publish research, but then you have funders like VCs or similar, who would say, oh, don't publish this, because then your other company will take it and build upon it a better thing. So you're not thinking about how this could help go a step forward and forward. If everybody would open their results, we would be further away than we are now, right? And everybody could have benefits from it, even private companies. But most of these companies are like, also in Slovenia, I mean, we have similar problems here, because when you have a startup, what they say is, don't publish, because if this goes out, then wow, then Google will take it and they will do their own stuff. But Google can do anything, right? It doesn't need one small startup from Slovenia to give them their own intellectual property, right? They have enough money to do anything. I think that we are not really aware how beneficial open science and data sharing is to the whole community. And we are still afraid of GDPR, how is it called? GDPR, thank you. So especially we who are collecting data from hospitals, right, from patients, it's always, okay, now these high-end journals want you to also publish the data along with the paper. And then we are like, but can we publish it? Are we allowed to publish it? Because usually you are not explaining to the patient, okay, but we'll publish your data. It's not, it's of course anonymized. They won't say Vida from Ljubljana, age this and that has these problems. Of course not. It's aggregated and anonymized, but still it's a huge issue. And with this, we have problems. So we have on one side a regulatory framework that is kind of a limiting for us. Then we have profits, right? Profit and private companies who all want just profit and that's it, who don't want to have open science. I don't know. We are somewhere floating, I would say. Maybe others don't agree.
Yeah, actually, I don't think I have much to say about this debate because in science, at least in my own science of astronomy, well, we don't have actually much in terms of issues of security, right? We take data, if we have data, but very often actually these are simulations, they're not even real data. And that's what we use for training. And so it's not really a big issue for now. But I want to actually go back to one of the points that was made here, that English is, the large language models are almost perfect for English. And I guess this has to do with the syntax of English being very simple. And there are languages, compared to French, let's say, but there are languages which are even simpler. And those are computer languages. And actually, one of the great tools that LLMs have, enabled us is to do coding and programming, right, in computer languages. And it's very simple. You just, say a few things, give me a code, and it spits out the code. And and you don't want to have errors there, okay? So I still remember in my own days when I was debugging, my own codes for weeks, finding that, I don't know, I went over the 80 character limit on Fortran on a line and stuff like that, right? All of that is now, things of the past. So there certainly are great benefits to having perfect language models.
Especially when it comes to coding, yes. Last time I was on a conference where this, I don't know, vision of a new agent, I don't know, AI agent was presented, how we can have another co-worker in the totally digital world, and he works for us, and I have my own company with lots and lots of co-workers that are totally digital, so it's some kind of agents. Is this possible in science, to have like digital virtual scientists working for you? You just give them tasks and they do everything? Is it maybe Tanya?
Right, so this is really a subject of a big debate between scientists. So let's say, for example, Hinton on one side, and then there is, for example, Gary Marcus, a psychologist, on another side. So those are like the big stars of this debate, like that. Where on one side, people think that, okay, scale is all that we need. What does it mean? It means that, provided enough data, enough computing power, we will get to the point where, AI can actually be agentive as humans, where it has this kind of agency to be able to take decisions and to think, right? So this is now the word that we have been avoiding, because intelligence is about thinking. Language, not necessarily. So it's not that we know exactly the relationship between thinking and language, but I would say that, we can see now that you don't necessarily have to be able to think in order to be able to speak, let's say like that. So on one side, people say, okay, so no matter, we can just go on like this, as long as we have more data, more compute power, we will get to thinking, right? Because thinking is needed for agency. On the other hand, there are people more from psychology who say, no, it will never happen with more scale and with more data. So we have to come up with a completely different way of, imitating thinking. So to understand that, humans think in various ways. And so this way of thinking that is implied in using language is just one kind of thinking. But planning and taking decisions is a completely different way of thinking. And so some psychologists or neuroscientists, they're even saying, so our brain has something, like spontaneous activity. So our brain is generating hypotheses, and then we learn by testing these hypotheses and things like that. So currently, current AI with the large language models, they're not generating hypotheses. They're just reacting to stimuli. So they are typical stimulus reaction machines. And so
no planning yet. They're not capable of that.
Right. So it is a debate. I cannot say that for sure. I cannot say that for sure because it's really not easy to know, because those are deep networks. So I cannot say for sure. So that's why I'm, hiding a little bit behind authorities and side. These people say, we just need to do more of that. And other people say, there is something completely different that is not present in current models. And so the arguments for why this is the case, I can give a few. So one is precisely a self-driving car. So there has been a lot of investment in self-driving car and we are not there yet. So we are able to outsource some of the parts of the driving, but this full integration, this is what it requires, agency that with this way doesn't seem like it will happen in this way. You can also think about cleaning agents. When I first attended a course in artificial intelligence, so our examples were always those robots, that were supposed to clean instead of you. And so, to be honest, we are still not there yet. People are still cleaning. So they have all kinds of help and tool, but it's still people cleaning, right? So I would try to think in that way. So they're probably going to be, we will find ways, modularize, these big networks to find the ways how they can help us with very, very specific tasks, with boring, automatic, repetitive tasks. I'm sure they can do even better and they can improve on that. But how to put all of that together into a decision, into a creative process, I think I would be more on the psychology side for that.
But because here are just the scientists, and in science, a lot is possible. Do you think that this is possible, let's say, in a couple of decades future?
I would say again, I don't believe that it can happen so quickly that we have, a fully independent agent that can do experiments. So there is, in science, there is a lot of boring and repetitive work. And this is also what I say to my students, you have to do some boring tasks in order to be able to do interesting tasks. So what I think, and I hope it will happen, is that we will have machines doing the boring tasks. And then, but I don't think that we will have machines doing everything. That I cannot imagine, really.
And Nenad, were you raising your hand? Did you want to say anything, add anything?
No, I mean, maybe in my mind, there will always be things for us to do, I would imagine. So I definitely agree with that. I'm on the opposite side of the camp personally of that debate. I don't see a particular reason why there would be some kind of a fundamental obstacle. The whole text of the bitter lesson, so-called, that Sutton, I believe, had written like ages ago, still kind of goes strong. And I think we ourselves have been burned by that a little bit in terms of thinking we needed something that was maybe too intricate, and maybe we don't necessarily need something being that intricate. I would just warn against one thing, which is obviously there's a lot of hype right now centered on language models, and obviously we're developing them here as well, and they can do great things. But they're by no means the entirety of machine learning, right? And when it comes to agentic technologies in particular, they're merely a building block, they're a component. So the fact that this autoregressive generation from the language model, there is a debate how much planning is within that in and of itself, for example, right? But that can simply be used as a component in an agent, as a building block. Same goes for, obviously now we have like natively multimodal models, but you could otherwise have like an encoder for vision, encoder for different modalities, and then bring them all together and do something with them. I was already mentioning tool use, which means that if there are capabilities that language models can't reliably do themselves, and I guess pretty famously they've been kind of bad at arithmetic despite having high scores on various other benchmarks, but they can just use a calculator, right? Or they can write, because they can generate code, and they can generate code quite reliably. As was mentioned, like code is quite a formal language. They can generate a piece of code and a function that does something, again, programmatically reliably. So these hybrid systems, neurosymbolic systems, if you will, don't really have that clear of a ceiling in terms of capability, because we aren't really talking about pure language models. I mean, there's no reason to talk about that. There is a reason why people like Gary Marcus like to talk about that, because, they have their angle and their point, and they're trying to argue for their point. But this is not the actual technology currently being built and used. So I think if we look at the landscape of what is kind of already here to an extent and what is coming, I just don't see the fundamental limitation. When it comes to planning in particular, there are many flavors of planning. Also, we don't really know what OpenAI did in their most recent release. But the whole field of reinforcement learning has been looking at various ways of doing planning before language models. So not in the language space. This was with world models or with simulators or in robotics and in other types of environments. Sometimes this would be on a more atomic level, frame by frame, action by action, or low level. Sometimes this would include higher level, kind of hierarchical reinforcement learning or longer term open options towards the future. So there are various methodologies around planning in other domains. And I think reinforcement learning is having a bit of a comeback moment into language with language models. I mean, obviously, RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback, was maybe the first step that enabled ChatGPT to sort of be well behaved enough to be released publicly in terms of aligning its output with what users would like to see. There is also a lot of reinforcement learning from AI feedback now that doesn't necessarily involve humans in the loop as much. There is a whole story of self-improvement, because obviously if you're just training on human data and replicating human data, you're kind of bounded by that data in a sense, even if there is a large volume of it. But if there can be a sort of a virtuous self-improvement loop through various critics and objectives and loss functions, the agent can improve beyond that and be in some sense, for its application area, superhuman. Obviously, we've had such agents, not in text, but in other domains before. There are lots of superhuman machine learning models for more narrow use cases. Generality obviously is a very open question. I think that was brought up before. I would obviously agree that we don't really have, AGI at the moment. We don't have really genuinely general technologies, but we have increasingly general technologies. And even before LLMs, multitask learning has been an approach people would normally take to get more generalizability out of the learned representations. There's also self-supervised learning and other things, but the more tasks you train on, the wider the distribution of problems you look at, the more generality you instill in the model, roughly speaking, on a high level. So given that these models are seeing more and more tasks, more and more data, there is multimodality going in with grounding as to which concept is what in videos, in images, in this and that. I think we will just naturally be seeing more generality over time. As to how fast things will progress, I cannot make a bet. I would just say that looking at some of the recent advances that have been made in terms of quite testable assumptions, and what I mean by testable is there was a benchmark, or I mean, there are many benchmarks, but as an example, right, there was a benchmark, and then people register their predictions when this benchmark will be beaten by some kind of an AI model. And there was sort of like mini betting markets, if you will, for some such very strong benchmarks. And recently what's been happening is that progress greatly exceeds all predictions. So, informed scientists, machine learning researchers in the field are giving their predictions when certain advances will be made, and they happen several years before for most benchmarks of interest. So I think if we just look at it empirically, we should all be very careful when we make such predictions, because things are moving quite fast, and it's not super clear to anyone exactly how fast they will go. Maybe they will plateau, maybe they will saturate, and maybe that will happen quite quickly. Like if there is no more data to use or something like that, or the compute gets limited. But we could also be seeing more of an acceleration. It's very hard to extrapolate and predict what those progress curves will look like.
Thank you very much. Well, the time is running off, so I would just like to switch also to the audience. If you have any questions or comments, there is a man in the first row.
Hi, Sasha Jarovsky from the Joža Stefan Institute. I have two quick comments, and I would be interested in the response of the panel. I liked very much this comment by Tanya, who said that it's a question whether thinking is necessary to produce text. There was this Slovenian journalist who was saying, I write faster than I think. So what large language models are currently very strong at, they are very strong at recall. It's amazing. But really reasoning is not their forte. And Of course, they can be combined with other approaches, but I would be curious to hear your opinion on whether you think this will really happen and when it will happen. Or maybe we could even bet.
Right, I'm really not good. I don't like to speak in future tense. It's really, especially given experience that we have, you know, like it's very, very hard to make predictions, right? And also as scientists, we know how hard it is to make predictions. So I'm afraid I cannot give you any answer to this. What I can say, you know, like it's important to understand where we are now. I think this is really important. And this is something that I think we should really see that these machines, that they can, you know, speak without thinking. I really think that we can agree on this. Now, why do we connect thinking with speaking so much? This is maybe another question to understand. And if we are able to separate thinking from speaking and understand, you know, what it takes to actually think, and if we can explain this to the machines, then yes. But we are not quite there yet, I'd say.
My second quick comment concerns AI and science. There was this question about whether we will have automated scientists. And I kind of think this is the wrong question. The question is not whether we will have AI replace humans doing X. The question is whether we will have humans plus AI doing better than what humans are doing right now. And I think in science especially, this is what we are looking for and pursuing.
Hello, I work for 40 years in information technology. And of course, I'm working also in direction to somehow help to build the sustainable, humanistic, ecological society. And as I see in future years, not so far away, all the tools that we will need will be at our hands. And AI is one of these tools. But what I see is that in this formula, something very, very important is missing. I also studied, Nenad, I think perhaps you know Suleiman Mustafa, who wrote The Coming Wave. I studied it thoroughly, and it's especially from the scientific point, how things will be, high technology. Now he is the chief of AI in Microsoft. But at the end, I saw that the most important information, what was given, is that we can come to the good future of the humanity. But the way to there is very narrow, and it's very going left and right. So a lot of dangers are on this path. So I can see that it is a very, very, I would say, little possibility to come to a good future of humanity, because something is missing in this formula. And through my research, I can see that in this formula is missing using contemplative science together with science. This is the formula that will work. Otherwise, dystopian future is very possible. What do you think about this?
Nenad, I think it's for you, the question.
I mean, I guess it's for everyone, but yeah, I can certainly jump in. I mean, I think it's definitely a very exciting time and a very challenging time. It is a fair point to indicate that there are many ways in which, if we don't act correctly, things could go wrong. I think you can say the same of any kind of powerful technology that was ever developed, that if it's misused, it can produce bad things. And I think maybe historically, it is what tends to happen. I mean, a lot of technology does get used overall, you know, for military purposes and so on. And it's not like every single invention is just used to improve our lives and make everyone healthier and happier and so on. But I mean, there is certainly potential to have a great future, and we just need to engage with all the problems and hope that we have enough creativity and can navigate this and find all the good solutions.
There's a question at the back.
Yes,
please.
I have a question, and that is, I mean, it's clear that, like, all our students nowadays have to be AI and native speakers, right? I mean, and they will. There's no question about it. But if you're thinking about leaders in the field, the people who shape that field, what role do you see for people who are trained, to the postdoc level in the combination of AI and domain sciences? I mean, what's our job there? Anybody wants to stand up? I think Uroš, I know the answer, but somebody from the outside.
Okay, so the direction of travel also from the European Commission instructions on how you should shape your research proposals is bring the STEM scientists, so hardcore science, together with the social scientists. It's not very easy to bring them together. It's not very easy to bridge the language gaps because you come from different perspectives, different backgrounds, but the key ideas and the messaging that is coming out is develop human-centered technology that is for good, and co-create between different disciplines and stemming from different sectors as well in terms of industrial sectors. And there's been a lot of worries in industry in general about job losses because of AI, for example, and there's been some strikes in certain industry, like in Hollywood a few years ago, because they were afraid that AI will just take over and start making movies, and the quality of the movies we have from Hollywood may be not that difficult to be done, but that's another question.
Yes, and today I heard that there is not going to be any need for journalists anymore because the podcast will be totally AI made and so on. Any other question, comment? There's also, yeah, in the middle. The floor is yours.
Hi, I have a bit of a practical question because all of this AI comes at a cost, right? So data has been growing exponentially and over the last decades, and so has also the electricity consumption. And I think by 2030, 20% or more of humanity's electricity consumption is only for IT and communication technology. And even, I read a paper that even if you make everything as efficient as possible, algorithms and so on, that can only offset 25% of that. So it will not offset the growth. So do you think that the advancements that we make are worth it, offset the cost at which it comes? I mean, I'm aware this is not only AI, there is a lot of Netflix probably in there too in the electricity consumption. But if you look at Google or Facebook alone, I'm sure they will have the consumption of several small countries.
This also, I have some data here concerning your question. For example, in the summer, I read that one Bitcoin transaction requires roughly the same amount of electricity as the average person in Ghana or Pakistan consumes in 3 years. That ChatGPT search requires 10 times more electricity than a Google search due to the electricity consumed by AI data centers. Crypto mining and data centers together accounted for 2% of world electricity demand in 2022. And that share is likely to climb to 3.5% in 3 years, according to our estimates based on projections from the International Energy Agency. This is what I have written down. So yeah, are more environmentally sustainable AI practices possible, given what she said already and asked?
Impossible to say, right? I mean, it depends. Why are you using it? So if a person who sits behind the computer wants to write something and then goes to ChatGPT, does a person think about, oh, how much energy am I now going to consume with my questions to ChatGPT? Probably not, right? But if we go further back, few years, not few, but a bit more, right? When they're with the Industrial Revolution, that was probably the same issue back then, right? Less energy was produced because there was no need to produce it. But then the Industrial Revolution came, the energy consumption rose. Of course, we had to produce more energy. And I think that here will be the same case. The question will just be, how will we produce more energy? So what will we use to produce it? Is this green stuff that's going on now really the right way or not? It's hard to say. I mean, I'm not a researcher on that field. I just know that we will need more energy, right? Either for ChatGPT use, AI use, or something else, Bitcoin mining, whatever. But this is something that we should be aware of, right? Even when you go home, do you turn on all your lights? Probably not, right? Or some do. And it's again, energy consumption. And then we have smart bulbs, and then we have the old-fashioned lights, right? Which were much, much better for reading, I must add, than this now. But still, it's hard to say. I mean, it's impossible to say. More energy friendly? Probably not, because we need more and more power to store all the data. If you want to build better models, we'll need more quality data, okay? There was one thing that was not mentioned here today, and it's connected to amount of the data that's being collected and stored. Probably most of that data, or at least more than half of it, it's crap, it's garbage. It's of no use. And if we put that garbage data in AI algorithms, we'll get garbage models, right? So garbage in, garbage out. Maybe we should start thinking about what we are actually collecting, what we are saving. Saving every kind of data that comes along, it doesn't make sense. Maybe with this in mind, we can lower a bit the energy consumption, but I think we'll still need couple of few, or maybe decades to get to know that we should start there.
A question there in the second row.
Thank you. So, Marko Robnik-Šikonja from University of Ljubljana. So I would like to comment on the energy consumption, because I think we are quite well informed in that area. We are building large language models, including one recent for Slovene. So let's say a relatively small language model that costs approximately 200 kilometers of electric cars. There are estimates for the ChatGPT 2 was created that it was the same as, let's say, 9 million kilometers of electric car, which sounds a lot, right? But it's one of the kind, right? So altogether, the electricity consumption is not that such a problem, and the whole industry is trying to reduce that, right? So definitely the consumption will go up, but I mean, there are also a strong tendency to reduce that and to behave ecologically. And I think there's a whole area in the research which tries to reduce the energy consumption. So I think this is not the largest problem. So if in terms of electricity, electric cars will consume way, way, way more. And if we, let's say, fly over the Atlantic, that's a huge consumption, right? So we should, definitely we should think about how to reduce the carbon footprint, but I would say that this is the largest problem. I mean, the AI.
Any questions, comments?
Thanks. I think that Nenad needed to leave. Did he write that? Yeah, okay, he needed to leave. Sorry.
Okay, so we
Thanks,
had
Nenad.
a good an hour and a half of debate. Thank you very much to all the panelists. I'm going to start on the opposite. So thank you very much, Uroš Seljak, for joining us, Brigita Jurisic, Tanja Samardžić, Vida Groznik, and then was Nenad Tomašev online with us today. I want to finish this debate with one thought. Last time we had the TV on, and there was one cartoon about one dog that likes to read, and he met Isaac Asimov in that cartoon, and I was really astonished how modern cartoons nowadays are, that children can actually meet such amazing people from the history. And then this Isaac Asimov said in the cartoon that the saddest aspect of life right now is that science gathers knowledge faster than society gathers wisdom. So this is what our kids are learned watching cartoons. And still a thought that's very relevant today after all those years. Thank you very much to all the panelists once again, and to you for a great debate. And I think now we are all in a big need for some refreshments. So they're waiting down there in the main hall. And I wish you a nice evening. And maybe if you want to chat or just continue this debate later, I think that it's time so that the panelists will have their time to chat and to have a conversation with you. Thank you very much once again.